Hello everyone, hopefully this is working okay. A few teething problems as usual, but welcome to our second live stream of the month. I'm just hoping that the sound and everything is working okay. I'm David Jones, I'm Chief Market Strategist at Capital.com. If you subscribe to our channel, you know that we do about 4 videos a week on various markets. Put one up yesterday on oil, on really an outlook for oil to the end of the year. We did the last live stream. When did we do it? I think it was a week last Friday, wasn't it? Over the payrolls. So I thought, well, let's do another one over another major release. So it's the interest rate announcement tonight in a few minutes' time. First of all, let's just go through some of the housework. This presentation is only for educational purposes, does not contain and should not be construed as containing investment advice or an investment recommendation or an offer of or solicitation for a transaction in any financial instrument. David Jones and Capital.com accept no responsibility for any use that may be made of these comments and for any consequences that result. Spread bets and contracts for difference are complex instruments and come with a high risk of losing money rapidly due to leverage. 72.6% of retail investor accounts lose money when spread betting and or trading CFDs with this provider. You should consider whether you understand how spread bets and CFDs work and whether you can afford to take the high risk of losing money. So there we go. There's our risk warning done. So what we're going to do, as usual this evening, is just take a look at the markets ahead of this announcement. Then we'll see what happens when the announcement comes out, and we'll look at the markets afterwards. We will look at a mix of different markets as usual. So I've got the dollar index up first of all. Clearly, as it's the US Fed announcement, the dollar is an obvious one to watch. If you've never looked at the dollar index, it's a really interesting market. I can never remember the breakdown of how it's structured, but it's the US dollar against a basket of different currencies. So against the euro, the pound, the yen, the Canadian dollar, the Swiss franc, etc. So it's a really good market just for tracking the US dollar as a whole. And I put in the comments, there is, I'm reading that about the video quality. They still haven't figured out how to get the resolution right. So bear with us on that. I think we'll try and crack it for the next one. I think if it does look slightly blurred, I'll talk through the levels. So the US dollar, we've seen a bit of volatility overnight. So yesterday the dollar index closed at about 93.15, and you can see the moves today. So a bit of volatility in the US dollar heading into today. So we'll take a look at this in a bit more detail. I think it's been a really interesting week. I think the pound is an interesting market to watch from here. So we'll have a look at that before the announcement comes out. We'll look at the euro, we'll look at stock markets, we'll look at gold and oil. I'm keeping an eye on the comments as well, so if there's anything that we don't cover, then put it in the comments and I'll see if I can. Thanks for the compliment on the haircut. It was well overdue, my haircut, if you saw yesterday's video, so that's been done. So first of all, what are we expecting today? No change from the Federal Reserve, the US Central Bank. It's already committed to low rates through to 2022. So if they do raise rates tonight or move on rates, expect all hell to break loose. So no change there. But really it's the economic commentary around it that could move markets. So the announcement is in about 10 minutes time, 12 minutes time. But there's a press conference at 7:30. So perhaps we have in 40 minutes time, 7:30 in the UK. So perhaps we have a bit more information off that. Markets to watch, we're going to look at them in a second for a bit more detail. We're going to look at the euro, the pound and gold. Clearly, if we see a move in the dollar, anything quoted against the dollar is going to move. And also maybe some stock market volatility. I notice I've spelt that completely wrong, volatility there. So very poor spell checking. Clearly, we've seen a bit of stock market volatility over the last couple of weeks anyway. They still appear to be strong, the stock markets, but we'll take a look at those as well. Just one quick advert before we get into it. We launched spread betting in the last couple of months or so, I think. So if you're in the UK or Ireland, you might know what spread betting is. Tax-free trading for UK and Ireland clients. Tax law is subject to change. Same great platform and apps. Visit Capital.com, obviously, to find out more. So that's a little bit on that. But let's jump back on the platform. So let's start going through some of these markets and take a look at what we can expect today. So the dollar index is a really interesting one to watch. If we look at the dollar since March, look at these moves in the dollar index. So the dollar index touched 104 in March at the height of the sort of the spread of the coronavirus, when things were getting really panicky. Flight to safety, US dollar did well. But look at it since then. Since investors have embraced risk again, we've seen stock markets clearly recovering really strongly. And we've seen investors desert the US dollar. But I think it's really interesting down here. We've seen this weakness. We've seen the US dollar slide about 10%, going from 104 down to 92. But what's interesting, if we zoom in a bit, over the last, month or so, 6 weeks or so, whenever it breaks to new lows, we don't get any follow through. So it also looks as if there's maybe a lot of that downward momentum has gone out of the market. So I do wonder if over the last few months of this year, do we see a US dollar recovery? So it'd be really interesting to see how it reacts. If you've watched any of the other videos that we do, you know that I'm a big fan of looking at support and resistance. So if I was bullish on the US dollar down here, I'd be a buyer with a stop the other side of that first September low. So that September low, 91.72. It's currently trading 93.08. So it's 130 points away. But if we did see a US dollar recovery, it could be interesting, I think, from here. The really interesting market this week, I was going to do a trade on it today, and I haven't done it yet, but pound against the dollar. So we had unemployment numbers out yesterday, didn't we? I think for the pound, we've got an interest rate decision for the UK tomorrow. So I think that could be interesting when that comes out tomorrow. But again, no real changes there. And here's the pound. So pound against the dollar, we've had this recovery off the March lows. So those were the worst levels since the 80s, weren't they? So back to 1985 levels, 114. And traded recently as high as nearly 135 beginning of September. And it's reversed since then. But what's interesting here, we've come back to the trend line. Now we have sort of slipped below that trend line. I'm a big fan of trends. But we have seen, you can see the last few days, we have seen this market turn around. So I do wonder if from here, are we going to see the pound rally? Are we going to see a pound recovery and a run back up towards 134, 135? So I think this is a really interesting market to watch over the next few days. If you're a fan of RSIs, I'm not the biggest fan of indicators, but we are down. We went oversold down here. So I think for me, the market to watch for the rest of this week, pound against the US dollar, and we'll see. Won't Brexit kill sterling? Somebody said. Really good question. And I think, as we know, if you're here in the UK, suddenly the Brexit conversations have picked up again. And I think this is why we've seen it slide. We've seen this 600-point slide in the pound because of the ongoing hash that some would say the government is making of the Brexit discussions. But I wonder if it's been overdone. So I don't worry too much either way. But I think from a market point of view, perhaps it's been overdone down here. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Let's take a look at some of these other markets, though. Let's take a look at gold. Is another obvious one, of course. We could see some volatility. We do have gold's a really popular one on the channel. If you're watching now live, if you can click on subscribe. We push out probably a gold video every other week. We've got a few gold trades running. They're up about 140 quid or so at the moment, these gold trades. It's been a bit dull, I think, over the last week or so. We had that move out clearly to all-time highs at 2,075 for the price of gold, and you can see we had that big reversal from 2,075 down to 1,860. So a $200 move in about a week or so, and the market's just been a bit flat since then. But I still think it's positive. I don't. At the moment, it doesn't feel like it's going to go to 2,075 anytime soon. But I think clearly, if you've been a subscriber to the channel for a while, we've been watching this longer term trend in gold off the 2018 lows. Accelerated from March this year, and I think it's still positive. gold, but perhaps at the moment it's a little bit range bound. Okay, so we'll see what happens down here. I think it does. I think, as someone's just said, I'd agree with you. I think it needs to break through $2,000, really to get a bit of a move on. It's just chopping around at these levels. So it'd be interesting to see what happens. See if we get a bit of volatility for gold off the top of this. We've got a few oil. Let's take a look at oil. I think the video for oil went out yesterday, and I was short crude from, it was a bit of a fluke to be honest, but short from, I think it was about the 23rd of August in here somewhere. And I moved the stop down to 39 and put a new order in to buy at 39.50. So we can see that, here we go. Here's the crude oil trade here. So bought 60 at 39.48 in the end is where it was filled. So that trade is a little bit ahead. And I do wonder, after sort of the battering it's taken coming into September, coming from $44 down to, where is it? 36.5. It's been as low as. I was saying in a video that came out yesterday, should that has it been overextended? And that's definitely been the case. If I didn't have the trade on, would I be a buyer now? Clearly, none of this is financial advice. I'd probably wait to see if we get a bit of a pullback on oil. If we were looking at the hourly charts, do we get a bit of a pullback from here, perhaps into that 38, 39 area? But I do wonder. I do think that the move in oil had gone too far. We had, big support back here, which it did punch through at 37. I don't think oil's going to go to 50 anytime soon because there's so much economic uncertainty still, obviously. But perhaps we just get chop. So I think it's interesting here, but I'd probably rather buy a pullback from where it is. But let's see if we get any reaction from the oil price off these levels down here. The other market we look at, so we looked at the dollar index, we looked at the pound, we looked at gold, we had a quick look at oil. We'll see how these markets move after the fact. I think it's stock markets, obviously. So let's take a look at the S&P 500. So the broader US stock market. Let's just flip it to a daily for now. I do have a trade actually somewhere else on the S&P from when was it? I think it was last Friday or maybe Sunday night trading. I think it was last Friday. You can't argue with this trend in stock markets. As crazy as it may seem to some of us, the market's gone from, the S&P's gone from those 2,200 lows in March, punched up to almost 3,600, 3,590. And we have seen, I think, a bit of welcome volatility in September. It was getting a little bit boring, where it was just going up every day. Maybe sell off for a day, then bang, away it goes again. I think we've got a bit more volatility now, but I think the bias for this market is still up. Despite the sort of sharpish sell-off we saw at the end of September. So there's the moves in the S&P, and you can see clearly these lows from the 9th of September are pretty important. Down at 32.95, 3,300. Came back to it on September the 11th, so that was last Friday, wasn't it? Came down to 33.10, and we're up at 34 again. So I still think that the bias for stock markets is up. Let's take a quick look at the Nasdaq and Tesla. We'll have a quick look at Tesla because Tesla is as crazy as ever. So here's the moves in the Nasdaq. Let's flip it over to a daily chart, and clearly, this rally in stocks, the big tech stocks, the so-called FANG stocks. Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google, Apple have really dragged a lot of these markets higher. And I think you look at the S&P, it looks, in terms of the chart formation, looks pretty similar to what we're seeing in the S&P, the Nasdaq. So again, I think it looks like we've made a base. That's Nasdaq shares. I'm looking at the wrong thing. I want to look at the index. Not paying attention. Nasdaq 100. Here we go. I guess it's going to be a pretty similar sort of thing. Here we go. Here's the dailies on the Nasdaq. So again, came crashing off 1,500 points, but looks to again holding above those highs from late July, 11,000, that sort of level. We're nearly going to get this announcement in a second. We'll see what the market reaction is. Let's flip things over to the US dollar index. I did say we'd have a look at Tesla very quickly before the numbers come out. Tesla's absolutely crazy as ever. But that long-term trend did a great job. If you could go back last week, came back to the long-term trend at $300 post-split numbers, and it's just ramped up 50% off that long-term trend. Crazy market. Let's take a look at the dollar index. Let's bring it up and see how these markets are reacting. I can see the news. Fed forecasts do not see inflation rising above. The path of the economy will continue to depend significantly on the course of the coronavirus outbreak. Not really telling us anything new there, is it? Let's see how the dollar index is reacting. Let's split this off to a 1 minute chart. I'll just have a look at these headlines. Will maintain Treasury and agency-backed securities purchases at least at current pace. So that's again committing to continue their support. The Fed says it will be prepared to adjust monetary policy stance as appropriate if risks emerge that could impede attainment of Fed's goals. So I don't think we're hearing anything new here, are we? We didn't, it's not as if they were going to say, well, do you know what? We're going to stand back. We're going to stand back from helping the economy now. So I think they are saying the vote in favour of the policy was 8-2. So I think that's it. So you can see, look at it. You can see a bit of the volatility. I think if I zoom in here, so we did see initially on the news the dollar index pushed up to 93.10. You can see it's selling off a bit now, 92.94, 92.95, that sort of place. Let's take a look at euro US dollar. If the dollar's weak, you'd expect the euro to be gaining a little. Let's take a look at that. Here we go. Let's bring that one up. So again, like we often see on payrolls, I said when we did the payrolls live stream the other week, you can often get, I think, what's maybe best referred to as a headless chicken type reaction from the market, where it thinks, oh, this isn't very good, but actually no, it's pretty good. So I think it's very hard to trade over these numbers. I think it's much better to wait for the market to settle down. So the euro initially moved to 118.20. We're up at 118.45 now. We didn't talk about the euro, but let's have a look. I do have, in my own account, a few trades going on the euro because I think it's really interesting. It doesn't appear to have grabbed much people's interest, but the euro against the dollar, early September, trades to 120, which was a 2-year high for the euro. So for me, that euro trend is most definitely up. And I've got a few trades running after buying into this trend, and I'm just thinking about where to add some more. But for me, I think we could well see famous last words, that 120 level taken out at some point in the short to medium term. Let's flip this back to a 1 minute chart. So okay, that seems to like it. Someone mentioned that the pound against the dollar is moving. Then we'll take a look at the price of gold. You'd expect gold to be up a bit because we've got a weaker US dollar. So the pound's moved. The pound's moved high to low since the announcement, about 35 points, hasn't it? So 129.65, 130 up to 130. We're back in the middle now. I think it's interesting. I think for me personally, I am looking to do a trade on the pound tomorrow. Perhaps it's one we'll cover soon on the channel because I think it is interesting because we've had this sell-off from nearly 135 down below 128. It looks like we've made a base from 128 through to 128.30 on the pound, and you can see it's really today, isn't it? What's the date today? The 16th. Yeah, today we've taken out the highs of the last couple of days. So I think we've seen a really bullish move in the pound today. But what I'm hoping for is that we get perhaps something of a pullback into tomorrow and maybe Friday, and a better opportunity to buy in. So I'm definitely looking to be a buyer of the pound, and I'm going to have my stop loss the other side of these lows. So 127.60 are the lows. So I'm going to put my stop the other side of there and see what happens. But I'd rather wait and see tomorrow if we get a pullback, perhaps towards 128.50, 129. Let's see what happens. But let's take a look at the price of gold. Then we'll have a look at stock markets. So we've got quite a bit of volatility. I can't even say it. Never mind, spell it. Volatility over this, but actually not much change now. So this is a 1 minute chart on the price of gold. So you can see again when the announcement comes out, 1900 UK time. Swings from 1959 to 1966. So a $7 range in the price of gold. Did trade as high as 1969. It looks like maybe it's starting to calm down a bit here. But I'd say watch the US dollar index. Keep an eye on that. I think to try and get a feel for how the next couple of hours pan out. We've got a couple of hours until the stock market's shut in the US. I think we could have an interesting session for the next couple of hours. We've got that press conference at in about, what time is it now? We're in 25 minutes is the press conference. So maybe we'll see a bit of volatility off the back. There's the S&P. So again, when the announcement came out, a bit of volatility. And again, so we're trading now on the S&P pretty much where it was when the announcement came out. Let's flip this to a 5-minute chart and take some of the volatility out of this. I think it's interesting, actually. I'm a big fan of looking at the major high and low for the day. So today the S&P traded as low as 3402, came back down to it before the announcement, so traded down to 3403. We're currently at 3412. We do have this recovery going on. So I think, again, if you're watching this market, let's do a trade. We didn't do a trade ahead of the announcement. Perhaps let's put a trade on now on the S&P. So the lows are in at 3400. What was yesterday's low on the S&P? 3390. It looks like. Yeah, 3390 was yesterday's low. The low today is 3400. So I'm quite tempted to be a buyer. So let's get a trade on. Let's get a trade on the S&P. So 3390 was the low. Let's go 3385. Our usual risk, if you watch our videos, our usual risks are what are they? 250. So I'll do 125 on this. We'll do half the risk. So we'll buy 6 S&P where it is now, with a stop of 33.85. There we go. That order's filled. I think it's an interesting trade to run for perhaps the rest of the session. See if these lows for the day hold. See if the low from yesterday's hold. I'm not normally a fan of day trading, jumping in and out during the day. But if you watch the trades we do on our channel, some of our biggest winners we run for weeks, and I think in a couple of examples, maybe even a month or more, some of the trades on gold have been real big winners for us. But a whole lot to do about nothing. You're right, actually. Someone's commented there. It's true. You get all this volatility. It's a major announcement. You get a bit of volatility over the announcement, and then actually not very much afterwards. But let's see what happens with the press conference. Here's the dollar index again, and you can see again back to where it was pretty much just before the announcement came out. So what would I watch for the rest of this week? I think everything's interesting, from a medium-term point of view, even though we've been looking at really short-term markets now. I think oil is interesting for the rest of this week because, oil's picked up a bit on this announcement. Oil's interesting because I think, the sell-off in oil went too far. Like I was saying on yesterday's video, we have broken out of this base in oil now. It's trading, the level was about $39. It's $1.30 above that. Personally, if I hadn't bought in already, I might wait and see if we get a bit of a sell-off from here. But I think oil is an interesting market from here. And pound against the dollar, we do have that UK interest rate announcement tomorrow. Again, no changes expected to UK rates, but there will be some commentary, you'd have thought, about the state of the economy, the virus, Brexit, all that sort of stuff. So for me, I think because we've again, I'm wondering, have we seen a base in the pound from 127.60 through to 128? The fact it's been so strong and pushed to its best levels in about a week today, it is selling off now, which suits me because I don't have a trade on the pound as of yet. But I'll be quite tempted, I think, perhaps when the Bank of England interest rate is out of the way tomorrow, to look to be a buyer. See if we see a bit of strength coming in. The sort of thing I look for, if we're getting a sell-off like this, these are hourly candles we're looking at. So just to talk a bit of short to medium-term strategy, if we're getting a sell-off like this, I look for a bit of strength to come in. And then I want to be a buyer. So I want to see the market turn around for at least a couple of hours rather than just jumping in blindly. So I think that is a really interesting market to watch tomorrow. And when it comes to gold, I know we've got a lot of gold fans who watch our stuff. I think gold is a bit boring, but you can hardly complain, because we've had, I think, a pretty interesting mid-July to mid-August on gold, where it swung from 1800 to 2075 and back again to 1880. At the moment, it does just look a little bit boring gold. If I was a buyer, clearly we've got pretty big support ahead of 1900. So I still think any weakness down to 1900 still looks like a buying opportunity. But we're just sort of banging around in this gold, in this range at the moment. Oh, someone said Bitcoin. Let's have a look at Bitcoin. I am not a fan of Bitcoin at all, although we do have a trade on, actually. There is a Bitcoin trade running. Here we go, from a video we did on Bitcoin. Where did we buy? 10,800 on Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is a strange one because I think it's a market that sucks in plenty of new traders. But I would argue, from a short-term point of view, if you're trading it, it's arguably maybe one of the worst to trade because it is so volatile. It's a crazy market. Bitcoin, it's very entertaining, but it is a little bit crazy. What's been happening on Bitcoin? We've had this trend off these lows, haven't we? The March lows in Bitcoin fell out of the trend, but again, for me, even though I always plonk lots of trend lines on the charts, just because a trend line breaks doesn't necessarily mean the trend is over. It can just be an opportunity to buy in. And for me, so if I was a buyer of Bitcoin now, the closest I'd want my stop, probably the other side of this little congestion thing, early September, down at 9,800, that sort of level. So for me, it wouldn't surprise me if we had a run back up to 12,500 again in Bitcoin. Obviously, of course, I'm sure there are people who aren't going to sell until it gets to 500,000 or whatever it is. But for me, I think in the short term, it still looks pretty strong, doesn't it? We didn't look at silver, did we? Someone said silver. Let's have a quick look at silver. Someone's mentioned platinum as well. I've got a few trades on platinum. We might have a look at platinum. I think silver's gone a little bit. We did a silver video earlier this week. Silver's gone a bit boring as well, I think, like gold. But again, the price in July went from 18 to 30. Massive move in silver. For me, I think, as I said in that video, the trend is clearly still up. Recently on silver, it hit its best levels for, I think it's 7 years, isn't it? I think we hit 7-year highs on silver, back to levels not hit since 2013. So I still bullish on silver because that trend is still up. But you can see, a bit like gold, we're having a bit of a pause about what's going, after some of the volatility we've seen. Let's take a look at platinum. Let's have a quick look at that one. I do have a few trades on this running at the moment, but basically off the dailies. Oh, it's come off a bit today, hasn't it? It's punched a bit higher, the chart of platinum. We'll look at palladium as well. That was a great market last year, palladium. But for me, the reason I think platinum's interesting, again, it's because of, it's the old favourite. It's the trend. We've seen this recovery in platinum, and I think I bought. And again, it sort of slipped out the trend, but it hasn't. And I think I bought a bit back here, and I did buy more recently here somewhere. So for me, I suppose if you're a fan of patterns, you could say there might be a head and shoulders thing forming. I'm not a massive fan of head and shoulders, but for me, that recovery in platinum still going. But if it starts breaking below, again, I think these September lows in lots of these markets are really important because they've been good short-term bases. And on platinum, it's around about 880, I think, that sort of level. But it's interesting that it has reversed a bit today. Yeah, it's good. I'm really pleased with the numbers on this live stream. I think I'm always happy to do them. And if we get good turnouts and people subscribe, if you haven't subscribed, then I think Capital are happy that we carry on doing them. So there's the turnaround today in platinum. Nothing major by the looks of it. We're still above yesterday's lows, well above yesterday afternoon's lows. And let's have a look at palladium. Palladium, I don't know if you watched it. Palladium was an absolutely fantastic market last year and early this year in terms of trends. And then I ended up giving back an absolute chunk of profit in March of this year. I think my charts are running a little bit slow here, I think, because it's streaming, obviously, all this stuff as well. Incredible mark. I'd never really looked at it until we did a video on it, I think in the summer of last year. And just been trending higher for years, the price of palladium. Absolutely nuts. and it would break out, move higher. This was December last year. I remember buying more, breakout, and then we get that massive turnaround from 2,800, and it halved in about 3 weeks. It halved. But I think again, palladium, a bit like platinum, these precious metals. Is it a precious metal? I'm sure it is, isn't it? Or industrial metal, wherever we call it. We do have quite a good recovery going on, and at the moment it is having a little poke through 2,400. So that could be an interesting market to watch. If you never watch palladium, have a look at that. See if we get a bit of strength, and does it go crazy again? I hope so, but let's see. Let's see what happens. I think that's an interesting market. What else? Natural gas. Natural gas is another really interesting market. We did a video on that the other day, didn't we? Again, it's another market I hadn't looked at much until the last year or so. Crazily volatile market, natural gas. But it's had this massive run. We do have this trade running. It's been my one winning trade on natural gas. I wonder if I'm still in it. Oh yeah, here it is. So bought on the 21st of July at 168.60, and it's currently 260 at the moment. So it's had a massive move, natural gas, off these lows, and then it just went sort of ballistic late July to where we are now. It is looking, I think, perhaps a little bit toppy up here, but I think it will be interesting if we see natural gas perhaps sell off down towards 2 if it happens, or 2.2, down to those sort of levels. So I think, clearly, very much driven by the weather, what the weather's going to look like and all that sort of stuff. I don't really understand the fundamentals, obviously. I just trade the trend. But it's a really interesting market. But perhaps up at these levels, it's getting a little bit overstretched up here. So someone's asking about TLT. What's TLT? I don't know what that is. Let's have a look. TLT. I'm not sure what that is. Maybe we don't cover it. Cover it on our platform. But I'll have a look. I'll do a bit of research, and perhaps we'll cover it next time round. And I think that's it, really. That's it. We'll have a quick scan through these markets and see what's going on. I don't think there's a lot going on with silver at the moment. Bit volatile. Gold is let's have a look at gold. It's come back up again. It's really choppy and messy, isn't it? Let's have a look at the US dollar. Let's change that over to a short-term chart. US dollar again pretty much back to where it was before. Copper's an interesting market. We didn't talk about copper, but I think copper's an interesting market from a longer term point of view. Again, when the virus really spread, the market fell off a cliff. But look at the price of it now. So the highs for copper were about 290 in Jan, fell as low as 2. And this trend, I did buy in, I think about here actually, when it poked out to new highs. But I think copper's an interesting one, because clearly if the economic recovery cracks on, then things look a bit more interesting. But I think copper's an interesting market to watch. S&P, we're making money on the S&P trades. Look at that, what a fluke. Where is it? Where's that S&P trade we did? Down here. I made £65 on the S&P so far. Excellent. It's well worth staying in front of a PC till 7:20 for, wasn't it? So the S&P, stock markets are strong. You can't argue with the trend. They really like something. Stock markets. So stock markets, what were the highs for the day? They're pretty much on the highs for the day so far. Pound against the dollar. Let's have a quick look at pound against the dollar, because I really do think that's an interesting market to watch, because we've got the interest rate decision tomorrow. A bit flat and bit sideways. Euro dollar, I'm guessing, bit flat and sideways as well. So we'll see. Let's see what happens at 7:30 in the press conference. UK interest rates tomorrow. So a bit of volatility for the pound. We'll wrap things up there, but if you've enjoyed what we do, if you can hit the like thing is important, isn't it, on YouTube, the thumbs up thing. And if you can subscribe, if you haven't subscribed, we do have a slightly more relaxed approach to the other videos we do during the week, the pre-recorded videos during the week. So if you subscribe to those, you'll see those. And we'll do, probably the next live stream we do will be the payrolls, I guess, in October. So the first Friday of October. So if you're subscribed, you get a notification for that. Any questions after this, drop me an email, david.jones@capital.com. You can follow me on Twitter, @JonesTheMarkets. Go to Capital.com to find out more. Open an account, open a demo account, download the app from wherever you get your apps, and that's it. Thanks for coming along. I do enjoy doing these. They're quite, it's quite good and fast paced, isn't it? A bit of volatility over it, but no real change tonight. We'll see what the next few days look like, but I think there are some really interesting markets to watch out there. Enjoy the rest of your evening if it's evening where you are, and hopefully you watch our other videos, and you'll be a subscriber to the channel. But see you next time.